Today is Saturday, January 4th. The new year is often a time when people think about what they want to improve about themselves, or in other words, how to be a better human. So today, we're talking to the host of the podcast with that exact name. Chris Duffy is a comedian, television writer, and the host of the TED podcast, How to Be a Better Human. He interviews experts on a wide range of topics, getting their best strategies for improving the lives of regular people. And he makes it fun and funny along the way. So today, we're having a lighthearted, but still very helpful, in my opinion, discussion about what it means to be a better human, how to make New Year's resolutions in a way that will take the pressure off so maybe they'll actually stick, and so much more. Welcome to the Newsworthy Special Edition Saturday, when we sit down with a different expert or celebrity every Saturday to talk about something in the news. Don't forget to tune in every Monday through Friday for our regular episodes, where we provide all the day's news in 10 minutes. I'm Erica Mandy. It's now time for today's Special Edition Saturday. Chris Duffy, thanks so much for joining us here on the Newsworthy.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So I want to start with your podcast title, How to Be a Better Human. What does that mean to you? What is that why is that the title?
I'll tell you right away that when they asked me to host a podcast called How to Be a Better Human, I was like, I think you have the wrong email. I think you've perhaps reached out to the wrong Chris Duffy. It is an intimidating title. And I always feel like I have to give a disclaimer when I tell people that I host a show called How to Be a Better Human, which is that I do not know how to be a better human. And I do not think that I am a better human. It is the people that we interview who know that. The actual origin is that TED had kind of a written vertical on their website where there were articles that were coming in the How to Be a Better Human. The idea was, here are these big ideas from these geniuses that give TED Talks. How would a regular person put them into place in their life? I like the better part, which is not how to be the best or how to be a great. It's just how to make some steps into the right direction.
And I imagine through talking to all of these different types of experts, you've learned a lot along the way. So what would you say is maybe the biggest misconception or two that people have about improving themselves that you've noticed is maybe not true after all of these interviews?
I think people have this idea that to be a better human or to do any sort of self-help means to be a completely different person. Like, I have to wake up one day and all of a sudden I'm going to be the kind of person who wants to scrub the toilet, and I'm going to want to do hard, grueling labor that's for other people, and I'm never going to have a mean thought in my life. Like, I have to change myself. Certainly there's a big industry out there convincing you that if you just do this one simple hack, you'll wake up and be a different person. I think that's just not how things work. Being a better person is often just about finding the impulses in yourself that are already there and following them. So maybe you have this generous impulse that I want to text a friend who I know is going through a hard time. But then you kind of say, oh, is that weird? I haven't talked to them in a long time. And you come up with reasons not to do it. And I think that a lot of times the best way to become a better human is to just not stop yourself from doing it.
Is there another thing that maybe you've felt is the most surprising thing that you've learned from interviewing all these people?
One really surprising thing that I have learned, and it again, I'm giving you two things that are kind of fly a little bit in the face of the idea of self-improvement or the idea of self-help, is we tend to think that we should be good and perfect and better, and that will make other people like us more. But in fact, we tend to like people who are imperfect and flawed and vulnerable about all the ways in which they are kind of not having it all put together. There's a psychology study where they had people evaluate 4 different task completers. And 2 of the task completers did not do the task well. And 2 of the task completers did the task well, but they were all doing it identically. And so, of course, everyone said, I like the people who did the task better. They're better and more competent. But between the 2 people who did the task the best, the only difference was one of them, they heard what appeared to be them spilling coffee on their shirt and going, oh my gosh, I poured coffee all over my shirt. And people liked and thought that the coffee spiller was more competent than the person who didn't spill coffee on themselves. And I think about that all the time because it's like, you got to do your work, of course. But you think you don't want to be the kind of person who spills coffee all over themselves before you go into a meeting. And actually, if you are that person, people like you more and they think you're better at your job.
It brings everybody's guards down.
Totally.
So we have to be as perfect as each other.
Someone who walks in and looks flawless and goes, I slept well last night. And by the way, my kids are perfectly behaved. And did you know that my car has never broken down? Immediately you get in your own head and start getting jealous and thinking like, what am I good at? And I'm insecure. And if someone walks in and goes, my car, somehow a skunk has been living in the trunk and I don't know why. And if I smell like skunk, it's because there is a skunk in my car. You're like, that is so bizarre. And actually, I kind of love you and I definitely want to talk to you more.
It's a balance though, right? Because you also don't want to become the person that is always negative.
Yeah. You don't want to be the person who is always negative. And part of that is calibrating how much vulnerability you share. My wife and one of her best friends wrote a book that's all about emotions, and we interviewed them on the show. And one of the ideas that they talk about a lot, that I have used a lot, is this idea of selective vulnerability. So the book is called Big Feelings. And one thing that they talk about a lot is like selective vulnerability means that like no one can relate to you if you are never vulnerable, if you just seem like a robot or you're just perfect and there's no flaws. But also if you're, like you said, if you're constantly coming in with a huge mess, that's not effective either. And also if you're the boss and there's been a tough week of sales and then you come in and you go, I have no idea what's happening and I am really scared. People do not like that level of vulnerability. But if you admit like this is hard and I know that this is a real challenge and I feel like it's a challenge too, and I know that we're going to get it through it together, that's a level of selective vulnerability that kind of, you strike the middle ground, the Goldilocks room.
Your TED Talk is called How to Find Laughter Anywhere. So for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, what's kind of the main takeaway you hope people get from that? And why is laughter so important to you?
The main takeaway I hope people get is laughter. I hope that they laugh at the TED Talk. I hope one of the places they find laugh. Yeah, okay, good. I hope that one of the main places they find laughter is in the TED Talk where I'm telling some of my stand-up comedy jokes. The bigger thing is it's about how I started my career as an elementary school teacher. And I often think that kids are so much better at seeing the world as full of magical, strange, fascinating things. And we adults, we train ourselves to kind of look past them and to not laugh at them and to make things as normal as possible. So one of the big things that I try and do as a comedian, as a writer, as a person is just embrace the strangeness of the world, to see the weird things, to celebrate the mistakes. And I think laughter is so important because one, it's just such a tangible way that we know that we're connecting, right? If you and I are laughing together, we are in the same moment. You're not thinking about something else. We're in it. And the other is it's a way to release tension and pressure without denying the reality. Like you can laugh during a really hard time. And that's not saying like, it's actually all great. It's not putting on a fake smile. A laugh is often what lets us get through and keep doing the work that we need to do.
You're a comedian. I have a harder time making people laugh. So what's your tip for people like me who maybe aren't as easily funny?
People ask me this all the time. First of all, the comedians make people laugh in a very specific way, right? Like it is hard to make people laugh when you are standing on stage with a microphone and there's a room full of people who are sitting facing you. Most of us don't have that situation arise very often. It's like if you're giving a toast at a wedding or like a speech, that's the only time that comes up. And it is hard to make people laugh then. Most laughter, though, is about just being honest about what is happening in the moment. Or the safest way to laugh is to laugh at yourself, right? To say like, I have to admit, I just realized that my pants are on backwards and I didn't even know you could put pants on backwards. And then they look down and they see that you're telling the truth and you're both going to laugh a lot. I guarantee you. And I'm not encouraging you to deliberately put your pants on backwards to like see that, but it's about just being honest about what you see and being present in the moment.
Still ahead, my favorite part of our conversation, we're talking about New Year's resolutions in a unique but simple way. Chris explains why he does actually like resolutions, but why his one shift in how he does them now makes all the difference. That and more of our conversation next. But first, a quick break for our sponsors. With the start of a new year, it's a great time to start a new routine for your kiddo to ensure they're getting the full body nourishment they need. In our family, we do that with Hiya's best-selling children's vitamin and Hiya's children's probiotic. While typical children's vitamins are basically candy in disguise, filled with 2 teaspoons of sugar at least, Hiya is made with 0 sugar and 0 gummy junk. just a pediatrician-approved superpowered chewable vitamin that is also approved by my 3.5-year-old son. He loves the taste and the routine of taking his vitamins every morning from his own special bottle, and I love that Hiya fills in the most common gaps in modern children's diets to provide him with the essential vitamins and minerals his body needs to help support immunity, energy, brain function, mood, teeth, bones, and more. And we've worked out a special deal with Hiya for their best-selling children's vitamin. You can receive 50% off your first order. Yes, half off. To claim this deal, you must go to hiyahealth.com/newsworthy. The deal is not available on the regular website, so go to hiyahealth.com/newsworthy, hiyahealth.com/newsworthy, and get your kids the full body nourishment they need to grow into healthy adults. The Newsworthy is also brought to you by ZocDoc. Along with the holiday cheer, this time of year often comes with more sicknesses than usual, especially if you're a parent of young kids. And it's just not that fun to deal with. So make it a little easier on yourself to find the doctor you need when you need them with a healthcare app that can filter doctors who take your insurance, are located nearby, and are the right fit for whatever it is you need. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors, choose the right one for your needs, and click to instantly book an appointment. We're talking about in-network appointments with more than 100,000 healthcare providers across every specialty, from mental health to dental health, eye care to skincare, and much more. Plus, ZocDoc appointments happen fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking. You can even score same-day appointments. I check ZocDoc anytime I'm looking for a new doctor to support my most valuable asset, my health and my family's health. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/newsworthy to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/newsworthy. ZocDoc.com/newsworthy. Now back to our conversation. So I do want to talk about New Year's resolutions. It's that time of year where people are trying to be better humans. What's your take on New Year's resolutions and doing that, on January 1st?
I have to say, I love New Year's resolutions. I know that's maybe an unpopular take. I feel like a lot of people don't like New Year's resolutions. But I love personally thinking about, reflecting on where I've been and thinking about where I want to go. I think the thing that gets a little tricky about New Year's resolutions is oftentimes people put this big pressure on themselves. Like, it's either this idea of I have to be a totally new person or I have to make these dramatic changes. And if I don't, I'm a failure. So the two things that I like to do personally, and that I've kind of learned from a lot of guests on our show, are one, I like to start by just making a list at the end of the year. And you can still do this in January. You can do this whenever. But I like to just make a list of everything that felt like an accomplishment in the previous year. And not just professional, right? Like a lot of times my one of the top things on my list is I survived this year. It was hard and I'm here and I did it. I think making a list is great. It helps you to know where you've come from. And it just feels good to have the list of things that you've already done. And then when it comes to making the list of what I want to do, a thing that I stole from the author Gretchen Rubin, who I'm such a huge fan of. We interviewed her on the show and I listen to her podcast and read her books. She puts out like a theme for her year every year. So kind of a word that she's trying to go to. So I've loved doing that as not just necessarily like these tangible goals, but also like, what do I want to kind of bring in? So 2 years ago, my theme was warmth. I wanted to think like less about being cool, trying to be cool or like do all the things that were hip. And I wanted to think about like being warm, being the kind of person where people felt like they could hang out with me, where my house was open and welcoming. I wanted to push away from cool and to be more towards warm. And I think this year, 2025, I think my goal is going to be faith. And I mean that a little bit less in the religious way and a little bit more in the just like having faith that things are going to work out. For me, it's a little bit of like letting go of control and being like, faith is going to be one of my goals this year, that things are going to work out and I don't have to see the path as it opens. And then I know this is a long answer, but the last thing I'll say is when I do make my concrete goals, I try to make them something that is in my control. Because I think a lot of times people fall into this mistake that I had a lot, which was like, I would put on my to-do list, goals for 2022, sell a TV show. Well, it turns out that selling a TV show is not something that I can do all on my own, right? It requires someone to buy the TV show. So that step is not. So now I put something down like write a pitch for a TV show. And I also have been putting on for the last couple of years, and this is my biggest one, is have at least, I put down 10, but you could put down whatever number, have at least 10 big rejections. Because that lets me focus on putting myself out there in a way that isn't necessarily safe. And the goal is to get a no. So I have to send enough things out there that I'm going to get a no. And when I get a no, I get to just put the little tally mark down. And when you try for big rejections, occasionally you do get a big yes, which feels really great.
What are some concrete steps you're thinking about for this year?
One dream that I've had for many years is I would love to write a modern love essay for the New York Times. You know what it takes to get a modern love essay published in the New York Times?
To write it.
100% you have to write it. And then after you write it, you also have to, and this is where a lot of people would be surprised by this step, you have to send it to someone. You can't just keep it on your computer. I have had this on my list for 3 years consecutively, and I have done neither of those steps in the past 3 years. I have not written the essay, and I have certainly not sent it to anyone. So this year, my goal is to actually do one or even both of those steps, to not be like, well, what is it going to be good? Is it going to get a yes? Is it going to get a no? Like, just have the faith that if you do it, it will be better than if you didn't do it. Because it's frustrating to have this carried over for years in a row. I feel frustrated at myself, and I'm like, it's not that hard. I want to just have the faith that, like, I don't need to know that it's going to work or be good.
What's your take on the fact that a lot of resolutions, quote unquote, fail, that people aren't able to keep them going for very long?
The way to succeed at anything is to fail at even more things. So if you want to change your life, yeah, you're going to probably fail at a lot of steps along the way. But the whole point is to do things, to take motion towards what you want. Like if you want to be a writer, no one writes a book. What people do is they write a sentence, and then they write another sentence, and then they have a page. So if you want to be a writer, just write. We convince ourselves that it requires like all these big steps, but a lot of it is just doing it. So I think if you're worried about failing halfway through the year, that's fine. Start by doing it a little bit. And then halfway through the year, this is another Gretchen Rubin trick, is she halfway through the year puts a thing on her calendar to just look, evaluate it, how she's done, and think about where she wants to be for the next part of the year. There's no rule that you can't make a resolution in July. Like the resolution police aren't going to come to your house and bust down the door. Make a July resolution too.
Also, normalizing and accepting failure, I feel like takes the pressure off, which then allows you to actually do the thing. Sometimes pressure is what stops us. So I love that point.
And again, this comes back to we get it backwards about what makes other people like us and be impressed by us. We think when we meet someone who has failed and has tried over and over, we like them and we are impressed by that. When we think about ourselves having tried and failed, we think it's humiliating. That is not how, there are so few of us who interact with other people in that way. If you hear someone is like, I've been trying for 20 years to put up my rock opera about going to space, you might be like, that's odd, but you're like, that's kind of cool that they're creating something and that they have a passion. I wish I had a passion. Like, you don't think, what a loser. Everyone else's rock opera is already out there. Like, that's not how we interact with people. And obviously I'm giving you a wild example, but I think the point is failure and vulnerability are positives. They make us connected to other people and they make us be more the people that we want to be, but they just seem painful. And sometimes they are painful. And so we really hide from them.
Well, I like that as an ending, but do you have maybe a final thought or takeaway you want to leave us with?
Yes. My final thought, and this is the most important thought that I've shared the whole time, which is that I am not an expert. I am a clown who has been given a microphone. So you should not take my advice. And if you do, you should take it with the biggest grain of salt you can find. Because once again, remember that my title is comedian. I am not sort of like neurosurgeon and psychiatrist and therapist. So my final thought is really think deeply about taking my thoughts.
Well, thank you so much to our guest today, Chris Duffy. I had fun chatting with him, and I highly recommend you check out his website, chrisduffycomedy.com. And be sure to tune into the podcast that he hosts from TED and PRX called How to Be a Better Human. Of course, join us again here at The Newsworthy on Monday. We'll catch you up on all the news you may have missed over the weekend in just about 10 minutes. Thank you again for listening. We'll be back on Monday. Until then, have a great weekend.